We will see with program how to create primitive and referenced variables. I will create two classes. Class example int x is equal to 10 and int y is equal to 20. This is my example class. Next I will create one more class. Class test. Inside this class I will create primitive variables and referenced variables. Inside main method, public static void main string array args. Inside this main method, I will create primitive variables int p is equal to sum 50 and I will create int q is equal to sum method m1. Next I will create a referenced variables. After explaining this program, we will execute this program by writing in Notepad. Don't worry, I need to explain this program before executing. That's the reason I'm writing in Paintbrush. Referenced variables string s1 is equal to a and string s2 is equal to new string. A. These are referenced variables. Next, I will create our example class object. Example e is equal to new example. Next, after main method, I will write a static method, static int m1 method. This m1 method is returning int value. Inside this I will write return 60. So this is our example class and test class. What we are doing here is I'm creating primitive variables and referenced variables. Int p is equal to 50. I'm creating 50 inside my int p variable, and I'm creating int q variable, but I'm not storing value. I'm calling method in this variable. I'm calling m1 method. Whenever we are calling m1 method, control goes to m1 method. This m1 method is returning a int value. This is a return type. It is returning int value. And when control comes to m1 method, we have return 16. Whenever you are returning some number, some integer, or if you are returning integer, you have to put return type as int. If you are returning double value, you have to put return type as double. Now I am returning int value as 60. Then this 60 will be stored in my q variable. Then I am using referenced variables. I am storing a in s1, and I am creating string object. Then I am storing a in s2. Then I am creating example object. E is equal to new example. With this E referenced variables, object will be created. Inside that object, this x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 20 will be stored. I will show you memory diagram how it will store. P is equal to 50. This 50 will be stored inside this memory. And variable name is P. Next, Q. Inside this q variable, 60 will be stored because I'm calling m1 method. When control goes to m1 method will be executed, and my m1 method is returning 60. That return value will be stored in my q variable. 60 will be stored inside q. Q variable. When control comes to referenced variables, S1 referenced variable. This is a memory of S1. Inside this S1, A will be stored. Inside this S1, A will be stored. And this memory will be having some address like 1010. This is the address of my S1 variable. Then inside S1, that address will be stored pointing to my referenced memory 1010. This 1010 is pointing to my memory. And when control comes to string s2 is equal to new string, it will create a memory with s2 variable, s2 memory, s2 referenced variable will be pointing to this memory. Inside this, a will be stored. And this memory will be having address like 2020. And this memory address will be stored in my s2 referenced variable. (2020) s2. And this 2020 will be pointing to my memory. Next, when control comes to example e is equal to new example, it will create a new memory structure for this e variable because we are creating new object. This is my e referenced variable memory. Inside this memory, all these primitive variables which we have created, x and y variables, will be stored. X is equal to 10, and y is equal to 20 will be stored inside this. And this memory will be having address like 30, 30. And this reference address will be stored in my e referenced variable. 30, 30 will be stored inside this variable. This is my e variable reference, and this will be pointing to my e memory. So we will see what we have discussed till now. Whenever we have created class test, whenever execution started, control comes to main method. Inside main method, I have created int p is equal to 15. Then it will create a memory for this p variable. Inside it will store this 50. Then it will name this memory as p because our variable name is p. Then control comes to int q is equal to m1. So I am calling a method in this variable. Then control comes to this m1 method. Control comes to m1 method. control comes to m1 method, then this m1 method is returning 60 value. That's the reason I have given return type as int here. So whenever m1 method is called, this 60 will be returned to this calling statement. Then this 60 will be stored inside queue. That's the reason a memory is created. Inside this memory 60 is stored and it has given name as queue because my reference variable, my primitive variable name is queue. This is how memory structure will be there inside JVM for primitive variables. Then control comes to referenced variables. String s1 is equal to a. Then for string s1 is equal to a, it will create a memory for s1 variable. Inside this it will store a value. Then it will give an address for this referenced variable as some 1010. Then inside this s1, this memory address will be stored 1010. Then this address is pointing to our s1 referenced memory. Same will be happening for s2 referenced variable. String s2 is equal to new string of a. s2 referenced variable will be created with 2020. Then this 2020 address is pointing to my s2 referenced variable with a. Then example e is equal to new example. Then one more memory will be created for this referenced variable. Inside this e, inside this e, example object will be created. So example object consists of these two primitive variables, and this x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 20 will be stored inside this e variable, and this address will be having some number like 3030. The 3030 will be stored inside this e variable, and this e variable reference address will be pointing to my e memory. This is how our class will be executed and memory will be stored. Our values will be stored inside this memory. Now we will execute this program in Notepad.